Hi, welcome. Good morning. We're excited that you're here with us and so glad to have you join us. My name is Joan Kamau. I am the program lead for the off-grid sector interventions here at AMI, and I am so glad that you have joined us today. So we would really invite you to come in and introduce yourself, tell us where you are joining us from, tell us a little bit about your business. Please make sure you're communicating with us. And of course, I would like to hear more about you. As we do that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about AMI, African Management Institute. So we do this in 5 ways. In with the first, business survival. This is where we do it in managing your cash. Now you are forward. All right. Then the second way we are supporting our entrepreneurs is through Survive to Thrive. And Survive to Thrive is an extension of the bootcamp. And this is where we do a deep dive into the content that we have covered in the bootcamp. And here we are talking to grow, and we do this through practical tools and resources. Then the third way is we support you through what we call the Rise. And Rise is a reflection and meditation session. And of course, this is led by our very own psychologist and co-founder, Mr. Jonathan Cook. We encourage you to join us every day because it's a great, or rather every Monday, because it's a great way to start your day. And of course, if you miss on Monday, we welcome you to come and join us through a specific link where you can see what we covered on Monday. And we know as entrepreneurs, we have a lot going on, so it's a great way for us to start the day. All right. And the fourth way in which we support our entrepreneurs is through our newsletter. We want to stay connected with you. And how we do this is by sharing with you funding opportunities, resources, and also relevant information that you need to know to support your business. And then, of course, the last way, which is the fifth way that we support our businesses, is through Africa Thrive Live, exactly like what we're doing today. And this is where we have conversations that allow you to network, to learn, and to be inspired. So today specifically, we will be talking about investing in talent, how Africa's off-grid energy sector is managing change and people. And of course, we all are running our different businesses. Today, I'm sure you will all find value in understanding how this specific sector has been doing this. And then we have a few guests who will be sharing this with us. Of course, our work in this specific sector, including Empowering Managers Program, we would invite you to come and connect with us. All right. And so to help me take this discussion forward, I'm going to invite our guests who we have lined up. And so please feel free to continue communicating with us, telling us a little bit about what you'd like to know, telling us some questions that you might have. We definitely want to answer you. We want to listen to you, and we want to make sure that we're communicating with you during this session. All right, so to begin with, this panel, we're going to have a few guests, and so I'm going to invite them, and they will introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their business. So to begin with, I'm going to invite Simon from Shortlist. Okay, Simon from Shortlist will be joining us.
Hi, Joanne. Hi, everybody.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. Good to have you. Kindly introduce yourself.
Sure. So, hey, everybody. I'm Simon Desjardins. I run the search business for Shortlist. And Shortlist is a company that helps a range of different companies, but primarily SMEs, to hire across emerging markets. We've got a heavy concentration of clients in East Africa. We've worked with about 500 to 600, we've lost count, clients over the last 5 years. And we help clients with a range of different hiring needs, from entry-level graduate recruitment to mid-level search, all the way up to executive search. Great to be here today.
So I see we are having problems with Joanne's audio. So hi everyone, this is Naomi, and it's great that we could have you all here. Good thing I was a backup to Joanne, so we'll keep the conversations going. So allow me to add the second guest. Ashley, you could just go ahead and add our second guest, and I'm really sorry about the technical issues. Joanne will be right back soon. So allow me to add Emma.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, hi, Emma. It's great to have you here. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit more about what you do.
Sure. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Colenbrander and head of the Global Distributors Collective. We are a collective of about 170 last mile distribution companies around the world. Distribution companies selling a whole range of beneficial products, including off-grid solar products to underserved communities.
Great, and our third guest will be Liz. Help me welcome Liz to the session.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Nyakwea. I'm the director of HR at M-Kopa. M-Kopa is the pioneer in pay-as-you-go solar. So having connected just over 950 households across Africa, and diversified that product offering, to include lighting and phone products, with just over 950 employees across the globe, and excited to be here as part of this panel.
Great. And last but definitely not least, is Fatma.
Hi everyone, I'm Fatma Muzo, the Country Director for Solar Sister Tanzania. Solar Sister is a social enterprise aimed at, Solar Sister is a social enterprise with a mission of poverty eradication through empowering women economically through last mile distribution. And in Tanzania, we have more than 2,500 women entrepreneurs across 30 districts. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Fatma. And yeah, so today we're talking about an industry, like Joan said, that's quite emerging in Africa. And we're really excited because a lot of entrepreneurs have plugged into this industry. And today we are talking about how the industry is managing change, and most importantly, how the industry is managing teams. So like Joan said, bring your questions on board. And for the guests, it's going to be very conversational. So feel free, as I ask the questions, to just go straight into them. I won't make it very monotonous. So the first question is, so how has COVID-19, and one of you could take this, how has COVID-19 changed how last mile distribution works in terms of processes and consumer trends? What are you seeing?
So I can take this one. I mean, I think obviously it's a pretty different picture across countries, right? So data that we have shows that overall the impacts have been pretty severe. So we've seen about 70% of our members, last mile distributors, experiencing reduced sales, and nearly 20% have ceased operations completely. And that data is echoed by surveys that have been done by others across the sector, like NDEV and Gogla. And in general, companies are reporting lower customer demand because of reduced incomes. Customers are missing repayments, so default rates are going up, and companies are facing working capital constraints. But it isn't all bleak. I mean, some companies are experiencing record sales, and also the situation, as we all know, is just moving so incredibly quickly, and it's already easing in some countries, even while it's getting more severe in other countries. So a pretty diverse picture, I'd say.
Yeah, I could quickly add. Yeah, I could quickly add, of course, COVID has definitely affected last mile distribution, everything from curfews to increased hygiene measures, difficulty traveling across regions. When I think about Uganda that had a shutdown, our sales definitely took a dip then. But we have made some interesting insights in terms of just the loyalty of our sales agents being a key part of the longevity of our business. So we just recognize that before COVID, they did make a reasonable living and are purely commission-based, people who are taking that last mile distribution channel for us. And with this situation, it basically means it's a lot tougher to make that income on a day-to-day basis. So taking, that thought and actually turning it back into the business, we actually did a bit of work around staff contributing to what we called a fund to kind of just, in times when things were completely closed and people could not make an income, we actually substituted and gave a bit of income relief there because it's going to be a core part of them being able to sustain themselves. And, staff are engaged because we're able to contribute to that. And our agents are a lot more loyal because they're like, if the company is going out of their way to help us during this period to actually just get to the next day, then, when things open back up, they're going out of their way to actually make sure that we're getting to that customer at the end of that channel. Interesting, we've seen an increase in the demand for solar systems, especially TVs during COVID. And, a lot of people are at home now, kids are at home. So access to information and educational content is being very highly valued. And just to echo, what my fellow guest said, yes, through our surveys, a lot of customers kind of saying, we see an income reduction. There's a bit of uncertainty about our economic future, but we haven't seen a major slowdown in the repayments. And maybe that just shows how people value lighting and TV and the phones that they're using. But that's just been a great, thing to see that, they do say that, we're expecting an income, we're a bit uncertain, but they haven't slowed down on the payments in terms of what they need to do. But again, it might be very different from the unsecured lending sector.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Liz. And Simon, maybe you could take this since you're very strategic and think of business strategy. What are you seeing in terms of a long-term shift in terms of business strategy going forward? How is this affecting recruitment? How is it affecting the needs for staff, so to speak?
Sure. So I think there are two major trends that we're seeing with respect to talent. One is that talent is increasingly remote, meaning out of physical office. And whilst I think a lot of people a few months ago might have been thinking this is going to be, a 2 or 3 or even 6 month event, more and more we're working with clients, including ourselves, who believe that this is likely going to be a permanent shift in many cases. So most companies, most people operating in most companies will actually be working remotely as opposed to in an office indefinitely. And the second key trend is that talent is becoming increasingly globally distributed, meaning if everybody's working remotely, then if I'm dialing in from my home in Nairobi, I might as well be dialing in from my home in Mumbai or London or New York. The physical location, once you go remote, becomes less and less important. So for SMEs, what that means is suddenly your talent pool has opened up potentially for certain roles. And for candidates, that means that both they are, the opportunities have become suddenly global, but their competition has also become global. They're now competing with talent that's sitting all over the world, which has a whole host of implications for both candidates and employers. But those trends are coming through loud and clear as we go forward.
Yeah. Fatma, do you have anything to add to that?
I would like to add on how COVID has affected the distribution. So I'll speak in terms of Tanzania in general first. So in Tanzania, we never experienced the lockdown or any shutdown. But at the beginning, most of the private companies, they slowed down their operation, and most of their staff worked from home, including us, who have been working from home for the past 2 months. So, and this affected most of our entrepreneurs, businesses, and the distribution at large, because at first the COVID-19 awareness and communication, how people received it, created shock among the communities. Many people were scared to spend more money for the businesses or investing into the businesses. Instead, they were thinking of saving the money for the food because they did not see how the future is going to be. So most of the businesses were affected, including our business was affected, but not that much. This is because due to the government policies, it never changed all the business. Everything were open, but everything was slowed down, and we had to move our operation from in-personal meeting, like we usually have monthly meeting with our women entrepreneurs. That's where and when we supply them with the products according to their orders. But now we had to shift to the phone calls. So the entrepreneurs and customers could place order through the phone calls, and our staff will be there, will deliver the product by shipping the product either by bus or by car or by a border. There was no personal in personal meeting, and that was a little bit difficult for us, but we managed it because by sisterhood meeting, it has helped us to create the continuous relationship with our entrepreneurs. So even when we moved to the phone calls and virtual communication with our entrepreneurs, it was much easier, and our sales were not affected that much, but we had to moderate our training module and training manuals to fit business support to our entrepreneurs, of which it never had much effect to our women.
Yeah, thanks for that, Fatma. And I just want us to now deep dive into people. And we, like Simon alluded in the beginning, there's a lot of, we've seen the new reality with teams and the fact that it has really changed how people work. So for the sector, and anyone can take this, what are some of the key focus areas that you're seeing or you're doing when it comes to upskilling the teams or the talent that we have in terms of supporting them? What are you seeing? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I think, at this juncture, the biggest impact on staff skills is helping them, to work effectively and engage from home. So being able to move. So a lot of organizations that have never worked before remotely have now had to move to this new new way of working. So are they empowered? Do they have all the tools, access to internet and, VPN links and the likes, just to be able to make that transition to working from home? But then just building in, thinking of innovative ways to deliver content to staff through online channels. So, whether it's engaging internally and saying, we have leadership teams that can actually deliver content based on their own experiences or their own technical progress. And we're having, something called career socials every 2 weeks or so, just to get people engaged and keeping upskilled and understanding what they need to do next. Whether it's programs, through AMI, like Thrive at Work, where we're teaching people to manage themselves as well as manage other people. Because one of the biggest things, the biggest skill set that we will apply a premium in this day is self-management, being able to collaborate and communicate, and just having agility to balance all the competing priorities, because you might be called to do more than you would normally do in a normal setup. So it's great, to see programs like the Thrive at Work program, which we've engaged some of our staff with, so that they are better able to manage themselves, which is important in this COVID situation. And way past, COVID, at the end of the day, we'll have some really, well-equipped employees.
Yeah.
I might jump in
Emma, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that Liz has made, and I also think that sometimes upskilling has been a little bit of a side effect of some of the strategies that companies have been implementing to maintain business continuity, and also to keep staff engaged and motivated where they are less able or unable to work. So, for example, we've seen companies actively develop remote customer support capabilities, and other companies have taken their field staff who haven't been able to go out into the field and then deployed them into other areas of the business. And in some cases, that's to directly support response efforts. So, for example, by using call center staff to disseminate public health information. And so I think the purpose of these strategies hasn't been to upskill staff. It's been to preserve, the ability to operate, but it has provided the opportunity to upskill staff, and it's been a good retention strategy. And I think it's likely that companies will mainstream this more flexible type of working moving forward. And then I just wanted to flag that something that we're doing at the Global Distributors Collective is offering free training to sales staff. We've had a lot of companies say that they're looking for training content to keep their staff engaged, and to help their sales staff kind of hit the ground running, when lockdowns are lifted. So we're developing a self-led online training program through the platform learn.inc, focusing on topics like customer retention and bookkeeping and so on. So we'll be rolling that out in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and maybe Simon, you could take this, and I see Ian Dirangu has written a question. Ian will take those questions, but maybe Simon, you could answer and tell us what in terms of entry level, and Ian, we will take your question at the end and keep your questions coming. There's a question around what's the role, what does entry level talent play in all this? In terms, there are people out there, they're looking for jobs even in this situation, and how have things changed when it comes to entry level recruitment and moving forward, especially for more junior roles? What does this play in terms of long term? Yeah.
From an employer's perspective, and I realize there are both candidates and employers in this call, but from an employer's perspective, the employers who are, in our view, thinking most in a forward-thinking way about this include Liz at M-Kopa and others who are looking at entry-level talent less as a reactive need of what do I need to fill today, but more as an opportunity to build pipeline for future talent and future leadership at their company, particularly for functions that are in low supply in the markets that we're operating in, particularly technical talent. And so what we're doing as part of the Off-Grid Talent Initiative in partnership with the Carbon Trust and DFID is to help companies like M-Kopa and leaders like Liz to build up a talent pipeline of graduates who have the potential to step into full-time roles after a 12-month period. So the candidates get a year of internship or of graduate recruitment program to test and build their skills. And employers like Liz and M-Kopa get to almost test out whether there's a fit, whether candidates are able to work effectively in this new world, and then potentially take them on full-time after a one-year period. And we can do that in pools of 10, 20 larger groups that are able to then build up a pipeline such that in 12 months, if Liz needs to hire 5 data analysts, she's not suddenly out there scrambling and looking who's available today. She's got that pool. And so that's where I think Shortlist can play an incredibly powerful role with employers like Liz and M-Kopa to solve for that need proactively as opposed to reactively.
Yeah, and do you want to add maybe, I don't know, Fatma or Simon as well, on the sort of employee side or the person looking for a job? What are some of the things that they can begin to do?
I think that what I'll just say very, very briefly, and then perhaps over to you, Fatma, but the candidates who are succeeding in this new world are able to quickly demonstrate through their CV, through their application, in an interview context, specific achievements that they've been able to have in a COVID context, how they've been effective working remotely, how they've been effective working in using flexible hours, how they've been effective building new or selling, for example. I think we've talked about sales already today, how they've been effective selling in this new world. So rather than trying to ignore the fact that we're in this COVID world, the most effective candidates are the ones that call this out and are specific about how they've been effective working in a remote environment.
Yeah. But we have a few questions. I want to take them in, and Fatma, I know I'll give you priority in addressing them. We have David Lumate, who's joining us from LinkedIn, and also Lois Omolo. Let me take Lois's question first. So Lois Omolo, watching on YouTube, is saying, nice conversations going on. I got a question. Do you see a shift in operations, e.g. post-COVID? Will you do more remote operations or working compared to having full in-house operations? So I guess this is a more operations question, which is quite strategic. Does anyone want to take it?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. Look, the realization with COVID is that in 90 days, thereabouts, we've done what was expected to be done in 10 years. The CTO was the one who was supposed to bring about this whole revolution in terms of working from home, but a virus has made us move to that direction without necessarily having prepared for it. And basically, a lot of the realization is it's actually possible that we have just been holding on and holding off for moving to in this direction. Yet, if you speak to the actual employees, there's a lot more flexibility. You're reducing their commute time. We've seen such increases in terms of productivities of our customer care teams just working from home. Your commute is now 5 minutes from your bed to the desk that you work from, and able to engage and be very personal in terms of your engagements with your teams. And on the flip side, for companies, you're cutting costs at the end of the day. You no longer need those big offices that were needed before, because your people are actually able to work pretty well, working from home. And I think that realization is going to last post-COVID, and we need to actually start thinking very carefully about how to actually maintain that culture of people working from home, and it will impact where people work. So now you can live in Kenya and work in Spain. Roles are no longer fixated. Simon, you talked about this. It's no longer fixated on geography. Anyone, anywhere. It's going to be a competition for talent, and employee experience is going to be core around that, because you're competing for talent everywhere, not just in your, locale or country.
Yeah, thanks for that, Liz. I want to take another question from Henitosa Sitraka, who's on Facebook. So do you foresee a change in the compensation structure for employees? I can see we have a lot of candidate or employee questions coming. So do you see a change in the compensation structure for employees considering the new working arrangements? Fatma, do you want to take this?
Yeah, of course. I can say it will depend on the organization's budget and organization's missions. For example, I could see most of the private companies, they adapted like the pay cut for after this COVID-19 pandemic happened. But for example, if I take for our company aims at supporting women economically, that's including provision of employment. And I would say internally, most of our staff are women. 90% of our employees are women. So if we could say we could adapt that and do the same, that would not be supporting of women. So it will depend on the organization missions and the budget. So for us, we did not cut their salaries, we did not do any changes which affected their pay structure. Instead, what we did is we cut the unnecessary costs, like the costs which could be avoided.
Yeah. Thanks for that, and keep your comments coming. I know these conversations, time flies really fast, and I just want to give us an opportunity as we shift gears to give our closing remarks or anything we wanted to say that we haven't said, particularly thinking more long term. Jen is going to join this conversation. She told us before that how do we stop looking at our belly buttons sort of and start looking into the future when it comes to embracing this change, when it comes to our teams. So maybe you could give your closing remarks and sort of tips around that. Emma, I'd let you go first.
Sure. This has been an interesting discussion, and I think something that has come out from this discussion is that there are opportunities here, and the crisis has actually given companies and staff the chance to reevaluate and do things a bit differently. And I guess I've seen this quite recently with recruitment. When the crisis hit, a lot of companies put recruitment completely on hold, but increasingly, everyone's realizing, well, we can't just not recruit for the foreseeable future. So now, companies are starting to recruit and train staff virtually, and they're finding really creative ways to do this using, online training platforms and a lot of video content and lots of ways to kind of bring staff into company culture remotely. And I think that's really great. And ultimately, that's going to set companies up for a high functioning remote workforce, and it's going to save time and money and help ensure that there's a sort of common high quality standard of training moving forward if it's all being done, through online platforms and not dependent on in-person sort of onboarding. So yeah, I think there are some real opportunities here, and I think companies in the sector are really embracing that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emma. And I see we have a few questions that were directly that were specifically addressed to you. So where can we engage with GDC or yourself? I see Jerry was writing to us on LinkedIn. So maybe you can tell us how we can engage with you.
Yeah, if you jump on our website, which is globaldistributorscollective.org, our contact details are on the website. So drop us a line, or you can reach me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Emma. Fatma?
Okay, thank you. For me, I would say this COVID-19 should not affect should not affect how people have been behaving, should not affect how the companies have been behaving. Instead, we need to change our mindset and change our behavior and try to learn how to deal with it. For example, if you have staff, we have staff, yes, we should help and keep support our employees to change their mindset and behavior to digital supporting and digital sales. For example, right now, most of the salespeople, they use the digital platform to make sales. So someone will just throw up a product online and say, I'm selling this. They don't know how to sell. So I think what they need more is the support on training and education, how to adapt the new environment and the new business environment with this COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you for that, Fatma, and thank you for taking the time. Liz, I'd like to go to you next, and I want before you give us your closing remarks, there's a question here that came for you from David, who's watching on LinkedIn. So he has a question to Liz: how do you empower the teams in the field to serve customers, sustain sales while taking precautionary actions? Maybe you can address that, and then after that, sort of give us what you think of the long-term strategy going forward.
Yeah, I think, the health and safety of our staff has been core, in terms of everything that we've thought about over the last couple of months. So one, ensuring that we provided them with the relevant PPEs. So whether it's the masks, sending them sanitizer, so that even as they go to make the actual sales, that they've been equipped, with the right information, including what social distance, how to actually practice social distancing, even as you're going into somebody's house or compound, what you need to do to actually make sure that you're keeping them safe at the end of the day, and continuously providing them with updates on information on what's going on. But I think the thing that they felt most empowered about is, one, the fact that we're giving them the tools to be able to sell safely. So of course, back to the PPEs, two, the provision of the information, and three, in the event that they find themselves either not able to sell, or in a situation where someone has contracted COVID or is in contact with someone, we actually then make sure that we're giving them a little bit of income relief for that period until they get better and can get back into the field and sell. So I hope I've answered your question. In terms of my closing remarks, I have just three things I want to talk about. One, the whole aspect of employee experience during this time and past COVID, it continues to be key. Employees will always ask themselves, whether it's in time of crisis or normal times, the question that they'll ask themselves is, do they care? Does this company or management actually care about me as an individual? And the thing that I need to say is, as employers, as HR people who are on this call, as entrepreneurs, it's all about making sure that the employee experience is amazing. The second thing that I'll talk about is a bit more general in terms of the market is going to get competitive now and even post-COVID. So companies need to realize that you have to focus on that branding to boost your competitiveness, and think about recruitment outside of the normal box of, I have to recruit in Kenya because my role is in Kenya. Talent is less constrained by geography. There's a lot of flexibility, and we can now recruit anywhere. So we need to up our game. So make sure that you're focusing on upping your game as much as possible. And then the third thing it's relevant now and is going to continue to be relevant post-COVID is, everything is going digital and online, whether it's online learning, whether it's internal and external. So we have to focus on that, accelerating efforts to make sure that teams are more, they can actually attend remote meetings, whether it's sales teams in the field, they can have trainings and digital training material. Our team in Uganda is doing a really good job of that. This is going to be a core part, the digital skills and the digital tools is going to be a big thing that we need to continue to leverage on past this stage. And then just as a final after my three, is that recruitment is also going past the normal. So it's moving to online onboarding and online recruiting. So focusing a lot more on that than that physical presence that you always need to have. And I think that's all I have to say as my closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Simon, I just want to draw you in, and we have a question here from Damaris that I'd like you to answer, even as you prepare to tell us how we can stop looking at our belly buttons, like Jen likes to say. The question is, what is the biggest challenge that Damaris on Facebook is asking? What is the biggest challenge leaders or employers are experiencing trying to juggle business continuity and keeping staff on board? I think that's an important question. What are you doing? What are you seeing businesses doing? And maybe you could answer that and then tell us your closing remarks.
Sure, it's a great question, and certainly we don't have all the answers, but I'll weave that question into the other trend that we're seeing that I wanted to share is, in my closing remarks, which is that from a recruitment context, the definition of a full-time employee or an FTE in HR lingo is changing dramatically and rapidly. More often now, companies are hiring roles that used to be full-time into part-time roles, or they're hiring roles that are entirely almost like an eat what you kill definition, where you have to go out and find a business and you get a cut of that business that you bring in. And so part-time work is essentially becoming the new norm, and it's helping job seekers and employees as well, because a lot of people suddenly are realizing that, gosh, I actually didn't want to work 9 to 5. I'm actually much more effective at odd hours or doing a little bit of work here and there, which is very different than a gig economy, which is sort of no ability to plan when your demand is, no ability to forecast revenue, but rather set a series of hours or amount of time every month to work. And Shortlist is helping an increasing range of employers meet short-term talent demands. So by either bringing in virtual interns, or by bringing in graduates who are working on a fixed term, such as 12 months with the Off-Grid Talent Initiative, or just by finding fully variabilized talent that is able to work on an as-needed basis. And so I think that's got to be a big part of it. And when I think about the next 1, 2 plus years in advance, I think it will be increasingly rare for companies to hire full-time employees, and increasingly common for people to be working, as many of us have talked about, with global talent that is working on an as-needed or part-time basis to help fill demand, because that helps business owners plan capacity requirements. We don't need to build up an exact number of full-time employees. And gosh, if demand drops one particular month, suddenly we're over capacity, and vice versa. If demand picks up dramatically and rapidly, we can suddenly bring on additional talent to meet that need. Similarly, on the employee or job seeker side, there's flexibility there too. So I think that's going to be a big part of the future we're about to be experiencing. But I'll close there. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for that, Simon. And I just want to acknowledge Shortlist, and thanks for partnering with us on this. I also want to acknowledge, before she left, Liz, who's been a great client. M-Kopa has been a great client and friend of AMI. So thank you. And we are continuing to have this conversation. We just want to shift gears and go into another session and bring in guests. So I'd like to invite my co-host back, Joan Kamau, to help me have the conversation for this next panel, and sort of just demystify what the sector is doing. So thanks for joining, Joan. Would you like to introduce our next guests?
Yeah, thank you so much, Naomi. That was an exciting discussion. Very glad that you covered this conversation with our guest very well. Excellent. All right. So now moving on into the next panel, we would like to invite our next guests. And of course, we do have a few guests that are very excited to join in the conversation. So to begin with, we are going to have our first guest is Toby from Haven Hill. Welcome, Toby.
Hi, thanks, Joan. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Introduce yourself kindly and tell us a little bit about what your organization does.
All right, so my name is Toby. I lead growth for Haven Hill Synergy. So we are a mini-grid developer based in Nigeria. So our goal is to increase energy access to rural communities across Nigeria. And we do this by deploying mini-grids. So right now we currently have about 4 in operation, and we're currently trying to scale to a couple of communities over the next 2 to 3 years. I'm happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Great, we're glad to have you. Our next guest is Moses from Tsunami Solar. Welcome, Moses.
Yeah, my name is Moses Dokoria. I'm the general manager for Tsunami Solar. We are a system distribution and installations company. We have a strong presence in Kenya. We also do have some presence in Uganda, and we're also having a pilot in Malawi. Besides the solar home systems, we also offer income generating appliances that we are able to empower the rural communities that we're engaged in to be able to make a living out of the income generating appliances. So we are forward leaning towards the productive use of solar energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses. All right, next we have Jared from ORB Energy. Welcome, Jared.
The income generating appliances.
Hi, Joan, and hi, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Jared Winstone. I work with ORB Energy as the sales manager, and I really appreciate joining you at this time.
We have Jared from ORB Energy. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you so much, Joan. I am glad.
Joan, and hi, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Jared Winstone. I work with ORB Energy as the sales manager, and I really appreciate joining you at this time.
We have Jared from ORB Energy. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you so much, Joan. I am glad.
Joan, and hi, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Jared Winstone. I work with ORB Energy as the sales manager, and I really appreciate joining you at this time.
We have Jared from ORB Energy. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you so much, Joan. I am glad.
Joan, and hi, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Jared Winstone. I work with ORB Energy as the sales manager, and I really appreciate joining you at this time.
We have Jared from ORB Energy. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you so much, Joan. I am glad.
Joan, and hi, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Jared.
Sorry about that. Great. I think we can all hear each other. Thank you. Thank you, Jared, for introducing yourself. And finally, we have Jen from Shortlist. Welcome.
Hi, Joanne. Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to meet everybody out there in the virtual world. So I'm Jen, and I am a Shortlist program director for the Off-Grid Talent Initiative project. So we provide free recruitment services to small and medium enterprises in the energy access space who are looking for entry-level talents. We can also support on cost sharing for the salaries, and we have a placement program, including mentoring, training, and ongoing support for any hires made through the project. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. Welcome. And that's all of us. Welcome. We definitely would like to hear from our guests, but also for everyone out joining us, please share your comments. We'd like to hear you. You can direct your questions to specific guests, and we'll definitely make sure that we are responding to all your questions. Thank you. So to begin with, we're going to talk about the first question. We definitely would like to hear. Let's start with you, Toby. Tell us, especially of experience. So tell us a little bit more what is changing specifically with COVID, and looking forward, how should we gear up for that?
Hi, John. Is that for me? I lost you a bit at the beginning.
Yeah, that's for you, Toby.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, so I'll just share a bit of background. So for the context, for everyone to understand the context. So just prior to the COVID pandemic, the Nigerian mini grid space, and in fact, the Nigerian off-grid space generally was gearing up to start the implementation of the World Bank NEP. So the World Bank NEP program is a program that put together by World Bank and the Nigerian government to increase energy access rapidly in rural communities across Nigeria. So for those in the mini grid space, so the program was supposed to or is still going to pay $350, per connection, just to incentivize companies like ours to serve those off-grid customers. So everybody, virtually all the companies in the off-grid space in Nigeria, we're all preparing, we're fundraising and planning their projects, liaising with all the key stakeholders in their supply chain to leverage on that subsidy to increase energy access massively across Nigeria. But unfortunately, COVID happened, and that has stalled a lot of things, on the fundraising side and also in terms of project implementation. Now, we've had cases where there were funders who were excited about the space just few months ago, but now while still maintaining the excitement, they've been cautiously interested, right? To see what the impact of COVID would be. So to talk about how that has affected us in terms of recruitment. So just prior to that time, as you know, with fundraising and with that kind of massive projects comes the need for talent. We're at a time when we were planning. We've done a lot of manpower planning for manpower requirements. All we had to do was just go ahead with interviews and then have new staff join us to be able to implement the program. But unfortunately, when that happened, we had to take a step back and ask ourselves, how do we first of all ensure that the current team we have do not suffer, as a result of this pandemic? So we made a decision, for example, to that we're not going to fire anyone. We're going to maintain status quo. But while doing that, how do we still ensure that when COVID is over, we will still be ready to go to site? So implementation interviews were delayed a little bit, but somewhere in the middle of the pandemic, we were still able to go ahead with some interviews, and that applies to some other companies as well, not just us. But unfortunately, the major uncertainty is around join dates, right? So while the economy is gradually being opened up, we are not yet sure exactly how things are going to go. So we've been stalling in terms of join dates, while interviews have been conducted in most cases for the future roles. But the question is, when exactly do they join? So I think I'll just stop there, and I'm happy to continue later during the conversation.
Sure, some very good points that you've raised there, that you have actually kept all your teams and your people. It would be nice to hear from Moses. Tell us a little bit more in terms of what are some of the strategies you've put in place in terms of supporting your people and your teams as you're managing to support the business going forward.
Okay, one of the things that we realized when the pandemic started, of course, a few restrictions came up, and there's been limited movement and, of course, social distancing. And as such, we actually have a paradigm shift from the traditional norm, where emphasis has mainly been on traditional hard skills like tech skills and tech skills and computer knowledges, but we realized that for any organization to succeed, you normally require both. But because of the pandemic, we've come to realize that the soft skills are important too. We, in our organization, we are putting it together with the hard skills. The soft skills involve like self-management, time management, planning skills, communication skills. So some of the strategies that we've employed is that in the past, before the pandemic, we actually had a team that went for training at AMI and were empowered with quite a number of soft skills. So we are using a mentoring strategy within the organization to be able to mentor others. And we, of course, are looking forward to have even the teams in the field need to get to actually learn the skills. So for me, I could say the talent gap is actually in terms of soft skills in addition to the hard skills, because you realize that we have teams in the field when it comes to last mile distribution. And in the past, we've not been key on their ability to work with, to work digitally, to be able to send reports, to be able to use a WhatsApp platform or even join meetings through Zoom. But now that is really, really key. We are having to give them phones to our teams that are working remotely. We are having to have them trained on how to be able to use that too.
Excellent. Thank you. So thank you, Moses. Actually, you've talked a lot about soft skills and what your organization is doing. It'll be interesting to hear from Jared. Jared, tell us a little bit about ORB has spent a little bit more time really supporting their teams and the learning culture in the organization. Tell us how you have seen that translate into business growth and how that has supported your business. Oh, Jared, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Great, thank
Yes,
you.
we can hear you.
I would love to say that the challenge came in, and it is indeed true that this was a hard situation for everybody, and everyone took this as a challenge. And with a number of companies looking forward onto how business is working, so many people would think that it is the right time to face off people from employment. But rather to us, it was more of a learning process, because it is a situation where everybody needs that income, the little income that is available. So as Orb Energy, our main focus was really not to lay off people, but to come up with strategies on how people can still be able to work remotely. And another thing, we eventually have to learn in a new way, because when a change comes in, people are always so resistant. But again, we have to come into the resistance and find a solution towards getting the challenges. And one key thing is that working virtually with people and organizing for meetings here and there, and also creating live events where people can have opportunities to practically do what they need to do on their own without maximum supervision, has also helped to manage the people. Another thing is it's a time when income is so low in most organizations, and at the same time we are still struggling to engage more in deals that are going to generate income. And since this started, it has not stopped us from working, and I can say that people are even coming up to learn more things with a new.
Oh, thank you, Jared. Definitely, you've been sharing quite a bit. I'm sure you will be joining us shortly in a few minutes. We would like to hear from Jen. Jen, tell us a little bit. I mean, I'm sure you can also pose the question to the rest of the guests when it comes to the digital shift in terms of new technology and just enhancing online capabilities when it comes to moving ahead and strategizing for the future. Tell us a bit of what Shortlist is doing, and of course, in partnership with organizations presented here like Heaven Hill and Tsunami Solar. Share a little bit with us on the same.
Thank you, Joanne. Definitely. I think I'd like to bring up 2 or 3 points in relation to your question. First, around digital talent, and linking back to the question you asked Toby and Moses and Jared earlier about what changes are we seeing. As companies are reflecting on how to consolidate their online systems, a lot of products and services, businesses have been very quick on their feet to innovate and think about how to transfer this onto online platforms. Companies are consolidating their CRM systems because they all of a sudden had to move 200 call center agents, reporting, ticketing systems, everybody working from home, how to shore that up and tighten it up. Software engineers, UX, UI designers, all of these have suddenly become kind of upfront and center, very real needs for companies, not just in the immediate term, but also long term, as we see where this shift is inevitably taking us, of how to strengthen digital online service delivery, communication between teams. This is key. So we've seen an uptick even in the entry-level junior talent space of looking into positions around IT, data analytics, as I mentioned, all kinds of software engineers, back-end, front-end, full stack. It's impressive. So I would say that's one change that we've already seen immediately and seems to be settling in for the long term. A second shift that we've noticed is a lot of companies experience some serious delay with supply coming from China. So conversations we've had with businesses is, they're rethinking, starting to pivot. How can we be less reliant on external support and build out, product locally, build out ops and maintenance capacity locally, so that our supply chains aren't so vulnerable in the future when something like this happens. And what's really exciting there is it's now opening up this space, particularly for entry-level talent, where, it was a bit of a tough fit before. So roles like R&D, product and design, engineering, technicians, quality assurance, these are starting to come more and more as options, and even at junior and entry level. And I think this is great. And, companies looking at how they can reinforce local capacity to weather any storms coming in the future is very smart. I would say one other shift that's happened is companies are reconsidering the role of entry-level talent, and beyond the obvious in terms of the cost benefits, it's about what place does junior talent have in the long term for companies, and that you can take on entry level, train them up, groom them, watch them grow completely in line with the company's mandate and their vision is definitely an immediate term investment for a long-term, extremely strong team. And there's a stereotype that, okay, you take on bright youngsters, they're going to work for you for a year or two, get experience under their belt and leave you. Well, that's not necessarily the case. And I would say my experience in OGTI program is we've got great talent that are really committed in the placements they've had with companies. And if the company invests in them, the junior talent is investing in the company, and it's a win-win for both. So yeah, I'd say these are three kind of major shifts we've seen. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jen, and helping us see what are some of the strategies companies are doing long term. And I think everything that can go wrong with Joan's internet has gone wrong today. So thankfully, I'm here to help continue the conversations. But maybe Jen, you help me sort of be my co-host. But I'd like to have a question with Moses and Olu, because you're sort of at the forefront of people within your companies in this industry. How would you describe your learning culture? But over and above your learning culture, what are some of the initiatives you're doing to sort of support your people and champion personal development for them? Maybe you could speak to that.
All right. Yeah. So interestingly, this is something that just as if we knew COVID was going to happen, right? So in December last year, we began a massive drive internally to upskill our team members. And the way we did it was that we put it out to all staff that so it was a personal challenge from the management that pick up any course on Coursera or any online learning platform, and the company would pay for it. And we didn't what we did was, we didn't even mandate it. There was not going to be sanctions or anything. We just said, if you would love to learn during the Christmas holiday, stroke the New Year break, New Year vacation, pick any course you would like, and we'll pay for it. And a few of our team members did it, and it worked quite well for them, right? By the time most of them resumed in January, they had completed some of those courses, or some of them were halfway through. So when the pandemic hit again, in fact, the very first week, by the way, we actually shut down before the lockdown in Nigeria. So immediately we announced that we're going to shift our operations remotely. We then again announced that anyone again within the team who wanted to take on online courses or on Coursera and other platforms, the company again would pay for it. And interestingly, we had quite a number of our team members do that. As at then, we didn't even know that this was going to continue for 1 month, 2 months. But one of the things that I have noticed personally within the company is that people, the level of knowledge that most of the team members had going into that lockdown, versus now has dramatically increased, right? So people now realize that, hey, this thing, I I'm able to save 45 minutes commuting every day. What do I do with that 45 minutes? And then apart from that, I no longer have employee distractions, right? I mean, I no longer have distractions from my colleagues. So I have like the entire day to myself to work on tasks, which means that they are now more efficient in delivering. So when you are efficient, what then happens to the remaining time that you have during the day? Put it into learning. So that's what most of them have been. In fact, I've had junior team members reach out to me several times during the lockdown to ask specific questions about some of the things that they are learning, that they are currently learning, that they feel maybe because I have more an advanced knowledge in that, and just for me to come and support their learning. So that's one of the things that we've done during this period. And in fact, we will continue to do that. So we will continue to support, to give that scholarship to all of our team members, both support team, management team, and technical team members who are willing to take up new skills or who are willing to top up to top up the current knowledge they have in any area at all. Because this has never happened in at least in our own history, in our own lifetime, right? So when you see your team members who demonstrate a high interest in picking up new skills or increasing the current knowledge they have, then the least we can do as a company is to support them, bearing in mind that that there are other challenges that this is currently forcing on them. So the least we can do as a company is to look for ways to support those learning needs, and that's what we are currently doing.
Yeah, and there's sort of never a best time to learn as this time we're in now, I guess. Moses, do you want to talk about what you're doing in terms of learning or other ways you're supporting your teams?
First of all, I would want to say that our learning culture revolves around 3 elements. One is we encourage and reward continuous learning. We do this by creating an environment where our team members are able to be creative. We encourage them to think out of the box. We ask them to come up with solutions in meetings. We actually have agendas set prior before the meetings, and each departmental head is given the task on how to improve results, irrespective of the environment. And it is discussed in the meeting, and we come up with solutions. So we also encourage sharing among the managers themselves, knowledge sharing, where the best ideas are taken and are moved forward. And in a bid to also encourage continuous learning, we are able to pick out some of the best talents, those who have demonstrated, and even sponsor a few. So a case in point is where we have a sales rep who is under sponsorship currently and is pursuing a sales course. We also are able to give constructive feedback through these meetings, because you realize that for any manager, for any employee to be effective, it's not only the good things and the praises, but also the learning gaps, the knowledge gaps, what needs to be addressed. So we are able to address and discuss them very, very openly, and get the entire team support to move forward. And of course, the other thing is also being able to lead by example, taking tasks that are a bit unusual and also taking a lead in doing some of them. This is something I'm able to do myself, and I also encourage the managers to be able to do it. So that our learning culture is centered around try to build on creativity and make them try to own their tasks and develop even further. And we see it working well. We have very innovative ideas that have come up because of that. During this COVID-19 period, we have a team of engineers that have recently innovated a touchless hand washing machine. We've been able to export at least 4 to Uganda, and we are still looking forward to selling quite a number within Kenya, so that you don't need to touch the taps. You actually, it has got sensors that when you place your hands, the water and the soap just flow out automatically. So I believe it's an innovative way going forward to try and generate some income, and also to put a check on the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Moses. Jen, I'd like me and you to sort of remain and just talk about putting it all together, all these insights we've had today. What are the next steps, and sort of how we are, we talk about more about the OGTI project and how Shortlist and AMI has partnered. But allow me to just let Moses and Olu leave. So maybe you could give your closing remarks, anything you wanted to say, or your parting shots. Moses, maybe you could go first.
Okay, my parting shots are basically given the environment and the pandemic that we are involved in, is that there is a need to seek more partnerships in terms of online training platforms, institutions and organizations that are willing to offer courses that we can be able to have skills developed, especially courses that are offered virtually, because we are realizing that the lessons actually learned through this, working through this pandemic are becoming very, very vital. We've seen prudent financial management becoming also key. I believe that's an area that some of the organizations that are offering virtual trainings should also be able to look into, because even how you manage the meager resources that you are able to have because of the decline and the challenge of having low revenue compared to projected, and vis-a-vis not being able to actually project how much you are going to be able to have. But I think it's a good learning curve that we can take even post-COVID-19, and we shall be able to implement better from the lessons that we are learning currently, the challenges that we are overcoming, and how to prepare better in the future, and even how to be able to build an organization with quite a number of teams working remotely. Those are areas that we may need to look into as an organization, even as we think of growing into other regions within the Eastern Central Africa region. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Moses, and thanks for taking time. Olu?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Number one, I think it's an interesting time for entrepreneurs and for companies globally, but more specifically to Africa now. I think it's a time where entrepreneurs need to learn how to further optimize their businesses with or without pandemic. I mean, the general principle that of personal finance, for example, as we would say, is that it makes sense for you as an individual to have 6 months of your living expenses saved somewhere in some rainy day account. I think right now the same thing is beginning to become more relevant for companies, because, for instance, all of us planned and did all sort of strategy in December and January, but none of us factored in this particular pandemic. So I think it's a time where the first set of businesses that took a big hit were the businesses that were not well prepared, especially around having enough funds to survive, assuming zero revenue, right? And that's why we saw what happened to most of those companies. I mean, downsizing, and in some cases, some even had to shut down. So I think it's a period where entrepreneurs generally would need to sit down and use this pandemic as a lesson to reoptimize their businesses and to ensure that in the event that this happens again, or even if this doesn't happen, maybe what happens when you lose half of your customer, for example, right? So businesses have to be further optimized, and that's number one. Number two is that businesses then need to now learn how to adopt technology in more innovative ways, right? So how and for me, this goes beyond just organizing meetings on Zoom or Skype or any of those things, right? You have to sit down and re-engineer your entire business. What are the things you can do using technology? So, for example, if you are a mini-grid developer or an off-grid developer, for instance, how do you leverage technology in conducting community assessments? In conducting energy assessments, for your customers. So how do you ensure that as your team members, maybe what would you normally need 5 team members to do? How do you leverage the power of technology to reduce that to 1, so that your cost reduces? Against time back to my first point around cost optimizations and the like. And then the last one is, how we should all use this period to learn how to care more for our people. People don't care how much you know until they see how much you care. So while we understand that these are difficult periods for entrepreneurs and for businesses, especially in the off-grid space, right now, I think it's a time for us to show our employees and our customers more empathy. While we are taking the hit, while companies are taking the hit, it's also important for us to ensure that we are not transferring that aggression in code, down to our employees, by just laying off people, via emails and not even caring what happens to them. So it's a time where we need to, find a way to care more about our people there being employees and also customers. I think I'll stop there for now, and I'm happy to have been part of this conversation so far.
Thank you so much, Olu. I'd like to bring in Jen. I'm sorry, Jared, your internet connection today has been quite poor, so we weren't able to hear from you and what your organization is doing. Maybe you could just give your closing remarks about in regards to what you're doing going forward as an organization. Okay, so sorry, Jared. I'll just take it back to Jen. So, Jen, what do you think about all that we've had today? What should we sort of take home?
I think that the last couple of months for the off-grid space have been, a time of reaction and, as it was mentioned in the first panel, like an incredible, radical amount of change in a time frame that nobody could have imagined, and companies, people were forced to adapt, sink or swim, and I think that the off-grid space, since it started, it has had to make a space for itself, and the determination and the grit of, the startups doing incredible things and the innovations that are happening. I think this industry lends itself to survival just by what tough, innovative folks are driving it in the first place. So if any industry is able to pull through this and move from, reactivity now to vision for the future, I think the off-grid industry, the companies that are in it, the people who work for them are the ones that will make that happen. But I definitely feel that now is the time to move from reactivity to, okay, what's next? How do we get ahead of this? How do we get, as Toby mentioned, leveraging technology? How do we get ahead of this in terms of the recruitment trends? How do we get ahead of this in terms of the changes that will be coming to products, to service delivery, to how we do things? For companies to not only survive but thrive moving forward, that's going to be key, to be able to pivot and to be able to be creative and look at recruitment needs, look at talent investment, not in the immediate term, but where everybody wants to be, at the end of this year, in the next 5 years. We need to get there to stay healthy through all of this. And it's been great today to listen to, how different companies have been coping and how they are brainstorming about what's coming next. And I hope that our audience members, we certainly didn't come up with all the answers today, and I don't think we have a very clear roadmap of what's ahead, but I do hope that this conversation has, inspired company, industry, and candidates to start thinking harder about what's next and how to be ready for it. Thanks, Naomi.
Yes, I like that. And I think at the core, because we talk a lot with entrepreneurs and business owners, at the core of every entrepreneur is sort of what you're talking about, resilience, just the ability to sort of bounce back, and just the fact that this industry is sort of dominated by startups or very resilient sort of companies. We are seeing that now more than ever. I think that's a great way to end, Jen. And so I don't know if you want to plug into the work that you're doing in the off-grid energy. So for us as AMI, we are supporting managers and team members in the industry through our Empowering Managers program that you can find more information on our website. Jen?
Yes, thank you. So the Off-Grid Talent Initiative, we're partners in this with AMI, and Shortlist runs the graduate recruitment program. To all the small and medium entrepreneurs out there listening today, have a think. So thanks to the partnership with DFID, Shortlist is able to provide free recruitment services to you if you're looking for entry-level talents. There's also potential for cost sharing and subsidy support for those salaries. It's a great way to mitigate risk and keep momentum even in these times. And it's part of a placement program with an incredible group of clean energy leaders. We're up to over 100 now, placed in 3 different countries, and we're growing 9 across sub-Saharan Africa. And it's the top talent across many different functions. And we'd love to help make that match for you. So please get in touch, check out our website after the show if you're interested, and happy to take that conversation forward.
Yeah, thank you, Jen, and thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for your patience. I know today, and it's beautiful that at these times, we experience a lot of empathy from our audience. So thank you, despite Joanne's and the technical challenges. Thank you for staying on, and I believe you'll have a beautiful day ahead. And till next Thursday, have a great week.